No, I wasn't in the military before the war. I joined after the war. The war had been going on from December, I believe, the 7th, 1941, and I didn't go in until November of 1942. At that time, I was approximately 17 years old, and I volunteered. And I volunteered for the Airborne. The reason I volunteered for the Airborne was at that time, and still are, they paid hazardous pay, which was $50 extra a month you got. So at that time, $50 extra a month was a lot of money, particularly when you was getting $21 in the Army, and you're talking about 71 versus 21. And then eventually I think it went up to 38, and our pay went up to 48, and that's primarily the reason that I joined the Airborne.
So when you joined the Army, where did you do your training initially?
Well, initially I went to, initially I went to Fort Oglethorpe, and then from there they transferred me over to Coy, Georgia, to the 501. 501, and then from 501 they transferred me to, which I got my basic training in the 501, and then they transferred me to 505, or 82nd Airborne, I should say. And actually 501 was sort of later in the war they changed that to division, but what division 501 fell in, I don't remember that. But I went to Company C in the 82nd Airborne in 505. I was in the 3rd Squad and the 4th. I was in the 3rd Platoon and the 4th Squad, which was really a headquarters. That was more of a mortar squad than what it was a rifle squad.
So you were strictly airborne? You weren't a foot soldier at all?
Yeah, well, airborne is a foot soldier. The only difference between an airborne soldier and a foot soldier is that they train you to jump behind enemy lines, and that's and when you an airborne, then you jump behind enemy lines, jumping behind enemy lines, and then you set up these roadblocks or barricades or whatever to keep troops coming in when they come in, and that was primarily the purpose of the airborne operation as a whole. The whole picture is airborne was drop behind enemy lines. You have certain objectives that you have to reach, or you try to reach them, and from that point on, see, then you become a foot soldier until they pull you out.
And after your training, where did you go to first for the war itself?
After my training, after I got to training, then you have to take what they call jump school. Jump school consists of 4 weeks. 1 week, I'll try to remember lots of things that I don't remember on account of my age, but the 4 weeks consisted of 1 week of nothing but exercise. From that exercises, that meant with 8 hours. You exercised for 50 minutes, then you rested for 10, and that was 8 hours a day for a week, which was 6 days, the best I remember. They had 5. I don't remember the 5 days. I remember the 6. And then the next week, we had jumping from towers. They had towers that were about 250 feet off of the ground. They'd have this horse just like you see in World Fairs or something like that, where they hoist you up about 250 feet in the air and they let you go. Then you also jump off of a tower with the rubbers, and like a bungee jump, so to speak, today. But back then it was training you to jump out of an airplane. Then the 3rd week was packing parachutes. You learn how to pack your parachutes. But after you become a paratrooper, then that packing parachutes was left to what they call riggers. Then the fourth week was the actual jumps. The first jump I ever made was so fast, it was all over before I knew it. The next day is when you got scared. The next day it seemed like you was never going to get out of that plane by the time you loaded up into the plane. But eventually there's never a time that I went up to jump out that I wasn't scared.
So after the jump school, were you sent to Europe?
I was sent directly to, well, Europe. When you say Europe, I was sent to the European theater, they called it at that time, and we went to Casablanca. From Casablanca, we went into, I believe it was a town in Africa, North Africa, that was called Kairouan. There we trained father for the invasion of Sicily. We had the training of, I don't know the time period or the lapse period between the time we arrived and the time that we jumped. I really don't know, but anyway, we jumped into Sicily, which was the first operation into the European theater. The other was mostly North Africa. We had originally been scheduled to jump up into Bizerte, but they had been all run out of there at the time, by the time that we got there. So consequently, they pulled us and they started training us for Sicily, and we jumped into Sicily. Sicily campaign was a sort of a testing area for the airborne, because this is the first time airborne operations had ever been put into effect. And coming back after it was all over, I think the Army had almost decided that the airborne was not worth its weight of the amount of time and trouble that they had to put with it, because of everybody was scattered everywhere. You got up with a group and you just fought with that group or whatever. Then we come back and they basically told us that, because then we started training for beach landings down on the Mediterranean Sea. And we must have trained there for, I guess, a week or so. And, I don't know how long it was after that we had a meeting one night that I think would probably be interesting, is with General Gavin. General Gavin at that time was not a general, he was I believe he was a colonel. Could have been a colonel or a lieutenant colonel. But we were supposed to jump in on Rome, Italy. And he told us that we would either live gloriously or die gloriously at that time. And but that operation never did come off. The record shows that actually that they had in mind of jumping us on the other side of Rome, holding the soldiers back where they could do an invasion of Rome, but that never happened. So they pulled us back off of the beaches, and we stayed in Africa. Time does means nothing, but anyway, I could go back to the dates, but dates are sort of immaterial, I guess, so to speak. Then we got a notice that we were going to jump into Italy, and they told us at the time that the invasion was getting pushed off of the beach. Right. So we jumped into there to keep the Germans from pushing the American soldiers off of the beaches in Italy. That was down at Palermo. What I remember mostly about the invasion of Italy was that they had put me off at as a guard at a crossing, and I was supposed to direct traffic from the beach back up to the hill of any of the airborne operations, any of the airborne that had got there. And here come next morning, here come that German plane, or that morning, here come that German plane strafing, and here come a Jeep. Well, I immediately jumped into a ditch on the side of the road, and a guy jumped in with me, two of them. And I come to find out that was General Mark Clark. So that was my experience there with General Mark Clark, who was a very fine fellow. And he says, good going, soldier, or some remarks to that. And but mostly that I remember about down in Salerno is the fact, I said Palermo, actually it was Salerno, because Palermo was in Italy. And Salerno, and was that we went out the second night, they took us out on the trucks, Army trucks. And these Army trucks took us out and let us out, and it was dark. And we were supposed to find a hill number so-and-so, and me being in the headquarters platoon, or squad, I should say, they sent me and another fella up the hill to find out if that was the right hill. Well, when we got almost up there, we heard all of this Germans. So we immediately turned around and started running back down the hill. Fortunately, nobody shot at us, and we didn't say anything. But anyway, when we got back down there, we told them the hill was full of Germans, and so then the lieutenants, we went to another direction, and we finally got the hill that we were on. And the next day, we had all dug that foxhole that night, and the next day, the hill that we were on was shelled continuously all day long, and not a soul was lost. So I think this was a miracle, probably of God. There's no question, looking back on my mind, that thinking about all the shells that hit on that hill that evening, because when we got back, they said, well, we could tell from the shells that was falling on that hill from the field glasses that nobody had survived. Well, fortunately, not a soul. Then after that, we went to, from there I forgot how many days we stayed there. It wasn't too many days, but anyway, they took us off that hill and took our outfits down and loaded on ships, and we went from Salerno up to whatever town it was, I don't remember, but anyway, it was some small town in Italy, in boats. And they let us off, and we walked the rest of the way into Naples. We walked to, I forgot the town at Mount Vesuvius, covered with ashes years ago. Pompeii. We marched through Pompeii. We walked through Pompeii, and it was completely. Then we walked around the road all the way around Mount Vesuvius, and we walked into Naples. And the people were they was lining the roads, you know, with throwing the flowers and everything, giving you the wine if you wanted it, you know. So that was an experience that I don't think I'll ever forget. Naples was a town that was a seaport that was completely destroyed. All the piers and all was destroyed. And we stayed there until we went up to the Volturno River. I don't remember lots about the Volturno River, but anyway, they pulled us back out of the Volturno River. That's as far as our outfit got. And then from there, they put us on ships again, and they took us to Ireland. We didn't know it at that, but anyway, to give you a little story about the ships that we were on Liberty ships, and the Liberty ships, if you've ever had submarines around and they throwing depth charges, why that when they hit that shell, that depth charges explodes. Why you get the fragments hitting the sheet metal on the ships or the metal on the ships, and we went through a time there that we was locked down in the ships, and that was a very trying time. And another time we're going. I remember being on top deck for some reason or other, and had general quarters. They sounded general quarters on the ship, and they said, watch for torpedoes on port side. And we were fortunate there because the German subs didn't get to us, and we got to Ireland. Ireland, we stayed in Ireland training, mostly walking and running for I don't know how long. It was several months. Ireland had the time we were there had to be early part of 44. But anyway, we were getting ready for D-Day at that time. But of course, we didn't really know that we were getting ready for D-Day as such. So we stayed in Ireland maybe I don't know, maybe a month, 2 months, and then we went to England to prepare for D-Day. We stayed in a little town outside of Leicestershire, by the name of Horn. And each morning we'd have to get up and we'd have to run 2.5 miles out, 2.5 miles back. Nobody liked that. You know, we'd always gripe about it, but we always had to do it before breakfast. And they'd take us on porch marches or night marches or whatever. And then they wanted how I got into Pathfinders, I don't really remember, other than this friend of mine we were in headquarters, like I say, squad, and they wanted a couple of men, and I volunteered and he volunteered. And I think we volunteered primarily to get out of the running and early in the morning. What I always thought as I look back on it. We trained there for D-Day for, I don't really know how many jumps. I can tell you only about one that I remember very vividly to this day, and that is that we had a night jump, and we were practicing for D-Day, and they were going to come in and see how low that they could drop us in the chute slows, and it seemed like that one night there they dropped us, and the chute opened, and the next thing I know we hit the ground. I say we, there was quite a few of them that hit the trees, but in my case I hit the ground. Fortunately, I never did get hurt into any practice jumps at all.
So while you were in England and preparing for D-Day, obviously you didn't know it was going to be D-Day, but...
We knew that it was going to be the invasion of France, but we didn't know any details at all.
So did you understand the magnitude of what the invasion would be at that time?
At that time, at my age, no, I didn't, because I really didn't care. I mean, you say, well, when you look back on it, you know, what enormous amount of material and men and all, and an individual soldier. I don't think he looked on it as the magnitude of what it was. It more was like another jump, another time, and consequently didn't turn out that way. It was the largest fleet, the largest airborne operation there was, other than maybe the invasion of Holland, and I'll get to that in the later part. We left on the 5th of July, and they told us it was the invasion. We didn't know it until that day. We got prepared and we got our picture taken. All of our jump sticks got our picture taken, and we were in the air during light. When we jumped, it was dark. Now, whether we jumped the 5th, we always thought we jumped on the 5th and got in early.
5th of June.
5th of June, or the night of 5th of June, right, or early morning of the 6th, whichever one it was. We always thought it was the 5th. We always felt that we jumped earlier. Going over on that ship, you might think, well, what was it like? It was very quiet. It wasn't lots of laughter, wasn't lots of cutting up. As normally you would, you got your lighter sides as well as the serious side. The serious side is when somebody's shooting at you, and you don't make that a joking matter. When we hit the coast of Normandy, it was just like a sheet of fire coming up at you. There were so many bullets, or so many shells. Whatever it was, we made it. We went in, we jumped. We were the only stick out of all of the radar teams that got our lights and our radar set up to bring in the troops for the next day. As far as what happened in Normandy, we were regular foot soldiers after we jumped. We we, the radar team, set up panels to bring in the glider troops, which we had a regiment of 320, best I remember, is 325th gliders. And when they hit those hedgerows, those gliders literally exploded. There's no telling us how many men or young fellows that were killed just from trying to land those gliders in the hedgerows that Normandy was known for, as far as because it seemed like every time you walked so far there was another hedgerow and it boxed in these little places of ground, and that's basically where we were at. Lots of them, the troops jumped into water. Lots of them drowned in water, not more than say 2 or 3 feet because of the gear that they had on weighted them down. We set up our lights. We had our lights flash. We had one light flashing, and the best I remember, we had the other parts set up, and our radar machine was working. And the next morning, we started bringing in paratroopers, and they started landing. We each one had a little, what they call a little cricket that I can remember an instant. During the early mornings that I heard this noise, and I clicked mine and I didn't get a click, and I clicked it again, and finally he returned a click to me. Then I knew that I was with friendly foes because it was very dark that day, the best I remember. I don't even remember the moon being out, to tell you the truth, but it could have been, but as far as I remember, I don't remember that part of it. We stayed in Normandy fighting for roughly 31 days. The towns we were supposed to cut off the peninsula of Cherbourg, where we could start landing supplies and all up at Cherbourg Harbor, and that was our objective at that time, was to take the peninsula and cut it off from the Germans. And also now, the first part that we had was that we were to keep any troops from coming into the beach. And I think the beach troops, the best I remember, reached us the second day. Is either the second or third day, I'm not for sure, but I believe it was the second day that before we saw any of the troops. Then we started with the Cherbourg Peninsula over there to cut it off with the Germans.
So as a Pathfinder, it was your responsibility, the reason why you jumped, say on the night of the 5th, is to clear a path for the gliders to bring in the other troops.
Now, to set up a radar, and lights to where the pilots could see it, and they had a radar in their plane that they could beam in on this signal. And then when they seen the light, then they would tell them, they would give them the sign ready and to jump, say when to jump and all. And we were the only one. Our stick, our radar stick, was the only one that, from my understanding, they got theirs completely set up and in operation, because they scattered them all over the peninsula over there.
So many troops, I understand, didn't actually land where they were scheduled to land or where they were designated to land because of different problems, weather and that sort of thing.
They always have that problem with an airborne operation. Yeah, you'll get a stray plane, maybe an engine trouble or something like that. He'll drop them anywhere. Some of the pilots at that time were they was anxious to get out of there. They just dump them anywhere. You know, they wanted to get out, and I can, you know, with all that fire and all coming up at them, I can understand that.
Were you fired upon as you were jumping onto them?
No, I don't ever remember this. We had a wall of fire right at the Normandy coast, and after we got into the inland, after we passed that initial fire from the coast, then we didn't receive any more fire at all that I can remember.
Were you yourself during this time, you said 31 days in Normandy, during this time, were you involved in a lot of combat?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Mhm.
So you acted as very
As
much as a soldier. At
As
that
a
point.
soldier, once you land and once you got rid of that parachute, then you're really just another foot soldier. Yeah, yeah. And that's it. But you're trained. You're highly trained in the beginning to fight and to kill. Really, basically, you're trained to kill. And when you train to kill, you do your job. It's either kill or get killed. And that's war. That's war itself.
So during this time that you're as a soldier, what goes through your mind? You're in the trenches or wherever you happen to be during combat. What goes through a soldier's mind?